In this clip, we want to talk about the CSST FTP server. That's a separate server on the Miles domain that is used for CSST administrative overhead functions. It stores all the install files for CSST and installs any files necessary for updating CSST on a regular recurring basis. It stores all the documentation for CSST, documentation files, most of which are Word documents. It also has a separate folder for each CSST customer that allows them access to certain portions of that information that we make available to the general public. And each of those CSST customer folders also has private information specific to that particular customer, in addition to that information which is globally available to all CSST users, and then more globally other information that's accessible only to those of us that can log into it directly from Miles Technologies. If you're on the Miles network, and I am via VPN from my remote location here, you can access it directly. It's /192.168.102.5/E$. It is the E drive where all the FTP information is located. So that comes up in the bottom window of my file manager here, which is Windows Explorer on steroids. And we see the FTP root, which is the folder where all of the CSST information is stored. Alternatively, you can access it via FTP. So if we put in an FTP address, and of course this can be done via the URL window in Internet Explorer or any other browser, Chrome, Firefox, whatever. So that would be ftp://ftp.csstonline.com. And this is the way most commonly most of our users would access the FTP information. So when we hit enter on that, it should give us a pop-up dialog asking for credentials, and I think that it's not because I was already accessing it. Okay, it was just a little bit slow. It did. So this is a normal CSST login that our users might see. We don't want them to be anonymous. We want them to use their ID, and I'm going to use an example. Tri-County Community Action Association's TCCAA is their user ID. Their password is TCC004, and we click OK, and it will put them into the same server but in a subfolder that is linked directly and private to that particular customer. And they'll see the structure is aliased in such a way that they will see the files folder, which I will show you in a minute through a more direct login via our own Miles Technologies access. They'll see a files folder aliased as CSST-files. So everything that's in this root folder for them is private and accessible only to this particular CSST user. Once they go to the CSST files folder, then the rest of this information is globally accessible to anybody, any of our users, including us internally at Miles, that have access to the site. Now I've reset the Windows Explorer window here. One other thing you can do if you use a file manager similar to this that uses FTP access, is you can set that FTP access up as a favorite, which is what I've done, and it will give me direct access through FTP right in the file manager itself. So I'm now looking at this as a file manager window, just as though I had logged into it directly using Windows Explorer or whatever. The other means of getting to this server, which may be quite useful at times, is to RDP into it. So remote desktop, I'm going to double click my temporary icon up here, bring the RDP application over, 192.168.102.5. We're logging in as Miles CSST /administrator. And the password is the same as the CSST hosted servers. All of our, well, not all of the Miles Technologies owned CSST hosted servers. The password is Snowmass, and that's L lowercase SN0M @ I have it set up to log me in automatically, so I didn't have to put in the credentials. We are now on that server desktop, and if we open up Windows Explorer through my computer, well, remember everything for CSST is on the E drive, and beyond that, it's in the FTP root folder on the E drive. So all the remainder of this server has uses for IT, for other possible applications that I'm not familiar with. If we need to get any information on that, we would need to go to Miles IT to ask them. Okay, within the FTP root folder, then the main folder that will provide most of the information that you'll be working with, or that your customers, our CSST customers need to be working with, is the CSST folder. And it's within that folder then that we see separate folders for each customer. So Action, AHR is Atlantic Human Resources, AM is Associated Ministries, and so forth. So there's a folder in here for each CSST user. When you go into one of those, you will see the files that are there specifically for their own private use, and all of these zip files are updates over a period of time. When they access it via FTP and log in with their credentials, then they would see that the files folder, which I will show you in just a second, aliased here as CSST-files. We don't see that now because we're logged in under our own credentials in Miles Technologies, looking at the real structure of the drive rather than the artificial structure created by the FTP server, ServView software. So that files folder is here. And so everything that they see as CSST-files, we see as just plain old vanilla files, which is the real folder name, subdirectory name. Within that folder, then, there are these four subfolders. The CSST install file zipped, other documentation, and update. And each one of those has a purpose that's pretty much described by its name. The CSST install folder, if we open it up and we were to copy this, in mass to a CD, we would have a CSST install CD. It includes all of the data files, all the documentation files that are included on the install CD, the install setup.exe itself, and so forth. That setup.exe is and if it's a brand new installation, they would need an empty set of data files as well, are the only thing that are needed for installing CSST. If they already have data and they're reinstalling CSST on a new machine or on a new server, then the only thing that they need is the setup.exe, and that's found in the application folder of this structure. So here it is, setup.exe. They can get in via their own access to FTP, CSST files /application in this case, and download this file, which is roughly 200 megabytes with decent bandwidth. It downloads in a minute or two, and they can then use that to install CSST. Back up one level to the other folders in the install the install parent folder, which are all included on the install CD. We've got a whole folder for documentation, and in documentation we have a whole series of folders, the most important of which to new users would be the user reference documents, and the most important of those in this System Administrator's Guide folder. And you see the most recent and current and comprehensive individual documents for each of the major forms in CSST, clients, families, programs, Head Start, the query builder, the service delivery, and the weatherization form. The System Administrator's Guide is simply a Word document, parent, or whatever they call those documents that contain the other documents. So it does not have any useful information in it. Back up one level, then we also have another series of Word documents, for the most part, documenting CSST. We won't go into those in detail right now, but be aware that they're there and where they are, and that you can advise customers to reference one of these as appropriate for some specific problem that they present to you. Back up another level back to the CSST install folder, we also find data and sample data folders. Those have the actual raw data. The data folder has an empty data set, so if they're starting out brand new, that's what they would use. The sample data folder is a full data set that's not empty. It has about 3,000 client records in it, in addition to lots of other associated records for service delivery and so on that can be used for sample and training purposes. The zip data folder has both the contents of both of those as zip files, so that if for a new installation, for example, the minimal amount of download time would be to use the setup.exe, and the empty data.zip would give them all the requirements to install a new version of CSST along with a new data set. Back up one more level now to the CSST files folder. We have the install files zipped as a setup.zip rather than setup.exe, and that's simply in the event that you need to email someone that file. That is not current because it's been, quite honestly, probably years or more that I have had the necessity of doing that, since people actually have figured out how to get to the FTP server and download the executable themselves. So it's not likely you'll need that. There's an other documentation folder, which contains a whole rather lengthy set of additional documentation files there were too many, and there was too much information there to include on the install CD. So those are available to them. And then the update folder mostly would be used internally by us, and it provides the files needed for updating the application on a periodic basis. The main one of those will be found in this new app folder, and that is this one, and it's always just a single file there. That's the compiled CSST.app application file that would go out as a part of the update process each time. That can be manually downloaded from here if you need to do a manual update for some reason. There's only one other file, typically, there's only one other file in addition to this that needs to be downloaded for an update, and we'll make a separate tape that talks about that.